woke up this morning to Venus opposition in Pluto, and yeah, she's got in there. This is the kind of transit that I'm like, okay, I'm happy it's already going. It's like when you have a day that is perhaps difficult or strenuous, and um, you kind of know that you need to go through this, and you're like, oh, I just want to be past that. That's the Pluto oppositions, and yeah, I woke up to a Venus opposition Pluto. It was, oh, that now it's obvious. What I want to point out to anybody who deals with this transit, and this is on the personal level, not the mundane level. It can be mundane if masses of people will listen to this video, um, which I don't outrule. But Venus is also still sextiling the Great Conjunction in Taurus. She still sextiles Mars, Uranus, and the North Node. And this is important because when we have such an opposition, especially a personal planet to an outer planet, okay, outer planets, Pluto, Uranus, um, Neptune, and sometimes even Saturn, and the rest of the planets are personal planets um, that are closer to us, that pertain more to our personal lives, in the sense that they describe something in our personal lives rather than a generational trauma and healing like Pluto, or all of them in a way. That means that the personal planets are downloading a new reality. And if it's an opposition, then we find it difficult to, like, it's the other pole. We need something from that other pole. For example, with Pluto in Capricorn, we need a certain sort of structures and a certain sort of lineage, uh, and there's a lot of, even when you do ancestral healing, think about our ancestors, like what they've been through. Two world wars, just our bloodline. For some people, slavery, a ton of abuse and violence. And we need a bloodline, we need ancestors, we need traditions, but there's also a lot of healing to do with that, and downloading the new reality where you actually heal that. Or I ran into saying that, I think I heard, I'm not gonna like say names if I critique it and it's not necessarily a professional thing. But some people say that, oh, in the past we could deal with wars, we could deal with strife, and we can't do it today. Today we are healing traumas of multiple generations because we couldn't deal with those, and at the same time dealing with war and food strife and all of those things that and plagues and all of those things that we said, oh, that's not something we ever thought we are going to have to deal with in our days. Um, but it's about the fact that those things happen, and that you don't learn how to do those things. You don't. It's not like you have the wisdom of how to do that, and then you do that. It's true that people don't carry a lot of food, but if you don't have energy to store the food, or if you don't have storage because you don't have housing, and also you've stored food, you can't really take it with you. Um, Speaking about doing wars, um, so yeah, and we all have healing to do about that, but um, we need the wisdom of the generations. We need the empowerment of that we get from the talents that our ancestors had. Um, we need certain positions of power. We need to be empowered with knowledge about what's going on. A lot of things are exposed in our or in the organizations that perhaps we rely on. It can be social organizations, it can be medical, it can be governments. You know, everybody's talking about the governments. And yeah, I mean, when you saw during the lockdown, Australian government invades into houses and coerces people um, to, to coerces a medical treatment on people that is not even approved and damages fertility and causes death rates to rise. Um, and that was Australia. That was not North Korea. That was Australia. That's not something you ignore. So Venus is now very much informed, and it can be that the Pluto aspect tries to blame Venus, tries to oppress Venus, try to make Venus feel guilty or whatnot. Oh my gosh, thank you to the beautiful person who is awake with me in this hour. It's a Jupiter hour. Go invoke Jupiter later. Um, I'm just with a back pain, so I'll have to wait till noon until I get out of bed. Um, so, oh, they went. They didn't say now. Okay. Um, so, um, track of thought. So the Pluto people in your life or the Pluto archetypes can try to shame because Venus is still in Cancer, so a lot of psychological abuse, right? Trying to shame, trying to use the emotions to kind of make Venus feel um, down and low, powerless, or whatnot. But Venus is sextiling Uranus and Mars and the North Node. So again, Venus is with what is to be. It's going the Venus way. And that means that there are things that we need to cultivate about everything Venusian. Diplomacy, if it's on a mundane level, definitely diplomacy because Venus is about bridging differences. In game theory, it's not zero sum game. It's called the battle of the sexes or the battle of genders, because it is a repetitive game of learning where can I compromise without giving myself up, and how can I represent my interests, and how do we meet our interests in a win-win situation. That is Venus in game theory. And when you think about diplomacy, um, you think about, people call it soft power. This is in no way soft power. It's definitely backed up many times by power, and that can very well be an initiation of peace that's backed up by military power. Um, so that can very well be, that case on a mundane level. It's like you're very armed, but you initiate peace. Like you don't hold this weapon. For those of you in the United States, maybe women holding guns, and the government coming for your guns, or even the farmers, because a lot of the farmers hold weapon to protect their land, and maybe the government coming for their guns. Um, but notice that Venus does sextile the North Node. So, and Mars is also militant. It's also arms. It's also weapon. So, and Venus in Cancer, that can be, women using weapon for protection from domestic violence or violence of the hierarchy. Um, so there's a lot in the news, and you need to understand that it's going the Venus way. This is why it gives rise to attempts to oppress or attempts to blame or attempts to shame, um, but it's going to go the Venus way. And if you don't know the sextile, then the sextile is an aspect that you need to activate. Okay, for the sake of North Node, yes, it's going to go the Venus way anyway. But if you don't know that, then you're not going to experience necessarily Venus sextiling anything. You're going to experience Venus opposition in something, and you're not going to know that it's not a zero sum game. Not only there is a third option, this game right now is because the third option is being created and being manifested and becoming concrete, especially during the time when the nodes are in the Taurus Scorpio axis. So there's a lot of awareness. Agriculture is not going to be the same. A lot of people are becoming more aware of those people who grow the food that they eat, and becoming more aware of perhaps ethics in growing meat, the meat industry, becoming more aware of the people. So it's both becoming more aware of the things that are wrong that are being done there, or people that take their rage out or take their psychopathy out on animals, that they shouldn't be doing that, even if those animals are raised for food. Um, about the way that food is produced in massive quantities. So it's being more informed, um, but still, you know, the Taurus archetype does rule food and nourishment, and Venus is a nourishment sign. So Venus wants to be nourished with healthy food and with food that is more ethically sourced. Um, and, and notice what are the first things we lost? The price of wheat climbed, the price of sugar. So you think about wheat and sugar, you think about gluten and sugar and the simple sugar, and think about the damage that they did in nutrition. So those are the first things that are okay. That's not really nourishing, um, but unfortunately, a lot of the world is still eating that, or eating that in large quantities, or eating that in the least healthy form, because of equity issues. Same for meat. A lot of the people that, why do people eat meat in general? It protects the nervous system, and it's the victims of rape and abuse that are most needy of that protection and need perhaps even more meat or more oily food, because they don't have money to buy omega 3. They don't have money to buy, B12. They don't have money to even try to go, vegetarian or vegan, or to have more ethically sourced meat. They don't have money for that. Um, so they eat whatever is there. And so, um, from the Pluto perspective, it can be like a man trying to judge a woman for eating meat during menstruation or something like that. It can be something as stupid as that. Um, uh, or it can be, in Israel we had a woman whose life was threatened, and the court of justice ordered her to be in a closed place, like for women. They call it a shelter for battered women. Like they still you ever since I was 2 years old and my life was threatened as a child, they still use the word battered women, and not survivor of violence, or victims of abusive men. That would be that would be statistically more correct. And then it came out to the news. She said, I don't want to go there. You gotta arrest the people who want to hurt me, and also if I go there, then they can try to hurt the entire shelter. And then they spoke about their society, and they came from the Bedouin, and I think Arab. I'm not sure if like Bedouin or Arab um, society, and they said, well, in our society, if a woman is battered or her life is threatened, she is considered to be the blame. And so the people believe that she deserves to die. And I realized that they were speaking from the vantage point of what they know about what of where they live, But to me, it was an eye opener. It was like, oh, this is not just Bedouin society. This is the reason that that's how women are treated if they're threatened in domestic violence. Because even our white ancestors thought the same. They think the woman is to blame if somebody tries to murder her. She must have cheated, she must have this, she must have that. And regardless of if she cheated or not, um, that's not the case. So that is, but then it was on the news together with reports on the war and together with reports on escalation with China and whatnot. It's like that was on the news, that was on the media, that was being it was something that the whole country heard about. That this is no longer the way we accept being treated. And remember, if you don't know that Venus sextiles this great conjunction that brings in the new. Also, a new technology. We saw a new technology that needs improvement. It's probably not the best that was supposed to combat revenge porn. Again, a technology in favor of women. Will it not need updating? It will need updating. It asks people to upload the hashes of their, I don't even know what it is, the hashes of their nude photos to a cloud service, which is not in any way protective. Like I don't think I'd give Zuckerberg my nude photos. Not that I have any, but anyhow, um, that is a new technology in service of Venus, in service of the feminine. So whatever you run into in your life today, remember that sextile. Draw energy from that sextile. Okay? What technologies serve you? What technologies need to be developed? What new innovations serve you? Does weapon actually serve you? Um, what what arms or armor is actually in your favor that you can use. For example, in the Israeli army, the IDF, it's mandatory service unless, you have like radical cases. Um, and so a lot of women carry guns. If you talk about domestic violence, in the United States, it's a Pluto return, so like every the whole case of mass shooting comes up. And is it the problem that we have guns, or is it the problems that the guns are shooting, or is it the problem that the guns are not shooting at the right directions? Talk about, the oppression, the oppressive rule of women's right over their bodies after going through rape and abortion rights. So are the guns just, is it the problem that we have guns, or is it the problem that they're shooting at the wrong direction, or is it the problem that they're not shooting at the right direction? Um, so that's something. And with Venus in Cancer, it's about emotional abuse. It can be, even if it's sexual abuse, there is an emotional aspect to it. It's gaslighting. It's trying to shame a woman for who she is. It's trying to shame the feminine, or men who portray more qualities that are considered feminine, or go into the yin aspect of being, of feeling, of sensing, of being creative, that they can be shamed for those qualities for a little bit, um, but it is in their it is in the favor of doing that. It is in the favor of understanding that we are both yin and yang, and just like women or the feminine has to be okay with setting boundaries and defending them and invoking Mars to protect them, um, then invoking Venus or invoking the moon to heal your ancestry regarding to the balance of yin and yang, the equity for that yin energy in science. Okay, the power of intuition, but both understanding that intuition can be as biased as cognition. So the intuitive knowledge, it has its pros and cons. Who are you intuiting? What are you in contact with? Who are those people in the masses that, mass wisdom? This is already the beginning of Pluto in Aquarius. The wisdom of the masses, with the pros and the cons about the wisdom of the masses, the power of the masses, and the pros and the cons about the power of the masses. Okay, but right now it's Pluto in Capricorn, opposition in Venus, and there is the hierarchy trying to impose something on Venusian qualities. Okay, or even the perceptions. You take some of Jordan Peterson, some of him I agree, some of them it's like, okay, I can understand how he got that, I can understand why he's thinking that way. I don't agree, I don't think that that's the right solution for humanity. um, or the perception that men should not be so emotional, men should not be, feminine, because it takes away their male quality or their spinal cord. No, actually, yin contains yang, and the more a man or a woman connect with their emotions and they get connected with not being so liable to emotional blackmail and emotional abuse, because they grow a spine. They learn to identify their emotions and then they learn to make sense of it. So they bring in the yang, but it's more informed. Um, and right now, Venus is informed about that. She's being conjunct in Pluto, and now she's opposition in Pluto. So she's very much informed of what she saw. She's very much informed that a lot of those things that the Pluto entity says is not about trying to make a conversation, but about trying to aim at the point where Venus is somehow blamed for being a battered wife, being raped, being, abused as a child, having emotion, or saying no to emotional blackmail. And now she gets it from the get-go. But not only that, she understands that what is to be is in favor of integrating and cultivating more Venusian qualities, more agriculture, more naturally grown food, more meat that is produced in an ethical way, perhaps in a lab, lab induced meat, but in a way that will not cause cancer. And that's one of the greatest challenges of technology in food, because basically it's something unusual that we need to digest and it can create all kind of side effects. So we don't want processed food, but then we also want to use technology to sort out the human factor in growing our food, because slavery had to do with growing food. If you talk about again the United States, the Pluto, and this whole conjunction is trining Pluto by sign. Okay, so it's trining that Pluto return. So slavery had a lot to do with agriculture. You know, slaves work, to pick up. We know the images of the black women picking up the cotton. So it was textile. And when you're not the landowner, then there is danger of sexual abuse, of sex trafficking, in the name of a lot of people ask for a job to housing, in to work for housing. Like you will have housing and you'll work in a farm or something like that. And while in a good family that can be very rehabilitating, it is putting a lack of equity. But then when you want to grow food in on an industrial level, you do need a lot of employees. So how do you treat the labor market? How do you treat the labor market? How do you treat those employees? Where will those employees live? Okay, and now we have water shortages. And the water element is exactly emotions. And what needs to be cleansed from our lineage concerning emotional abuse, abuse of women and children, abuse of the feminine, because both the moon and Venus are the feminine, and even on a mundane level, the peoples that were oppressed were considered the feminine. So it was a yin yang thing. What do we need to integrate in that yin yang to download the new reality? And the reality that we have enough water, that we have enough food, we have enough of the liquid that is yin, and the more dense sort of food. Thank you for the like. And the more dense products of food that is yang, that's very gross, like by large. Um, how do we integrate those qualities of yin and yang? Okay, think about Mars and Uranus, very young planets in a very yin sign. Okay, how do we work with them in a way that is supportive and nourishing? How is technology actually in our favor? How do we use weapon in ethical ways that are actually in our favor? Because they come to mark a territory, they come to protect the boundaries so that within the boundaries we can be Venusian, we can make love, we can enjoy good food, we can enjoy sensual and tactile pleasure, we can have good connections. That's what it's for. Okay, most of the wars are fighting for peace. The Second World War happened after people believed the First World War would be the war that will end all wars. So again, to those people who think, oh, we used to be able to do war. No, there was a reason people were prepared for an entire world war because they were like, oh, this is the war that will end all wars. They're like, okay, let's put it, let's do our fight, do our Mars, in a way that we don't have to do it anymore. But the danger is that people may develop these patterns of thought, may develop this pattern of, with Uranus and Taurus, this ideology, and Mars. There's like we are going to protect the land, and then we won't have to fight anymore, and um, and unfortunately that there came a second world war, and then there was the Cold War, which was not exactly cold, so it just like there were many mini wars around the globe that were not like a grand one, but still people suffered. And um, no, we don't learn how to do that reality or how to cope with that reality. We're actually three generations ago, three generations ahead, trying to heal traumas of three generations ago, while we have stressed situation on a mundane level, and a lot of people experiencing war again. Um, so yes, but don't forget, after the result, the medical experiments, the humiliation, the rape of children, of women during the Second World War. um, I cannot say it was unprecedented because it's history, but um, we cope with that till today. And women only got the right to vote after two generations of men died. Two generations. It's like they could not even be sex workers because there were no clients. So they began to do what men were doing, and then they got the right to vote because they simply they could simply no longer say, oh, politics is not, it's not like this is a man thing, and I take care of the household, I take care of the children, and that's that. No, they were now doing the job of both the man and the woman, um, and then politics mattered, and they had a completely their own views. So for some of them, it was like, after men began to grow, in the 50s and the 60s, um, some of them had to rebuttal. In the Israeli army, for example, women used to, sorry, women, there were women pilots. But then, after the 50s, after the 60s, it was like they had to rebattle. Only now you had a 669 unit that can accept women. It's like they had to rebattle going back to the army. Um, because the minute men grew up, it was like they came with this ancestral lineage, and perhaps some of the women were looking for a relief from the burden. But also, again, there was this battle of the sexes, and remember, this is not a zero-sum game. Also, when we come to make a change, this is not a zero-sum game. At the end of the day, we are the genders, whether they procreate together or not, but th- that's humanity, you know. this, this is humanity. And we run into labor market as well, you know, because now if there's an issue with China, the American comfort armchair is made in China. Um, you know, whatever, you know, brand Geely is the owner of brands like Volvo or I think Chevrolet. Um, so it's the car that you're driving, it's the armchair that you sit in, it's everything you have the American flag on is made in China. And I'm not saying I have all the answers because, you know, what if we had an equal minimum wage globally? How would that change the decisions we make in economy? I'm not saying that would necessarily be the best thing to do. I'm not saying that raising minimum wage does not affect living costs, because the business owner will just, you know, scroll that to the customer. And the whole point about raising minimum wage is to be able to make a life while making a living. But just for, you know, a thought experiment, what if everybody, what if you had, no matter if you go to China, if you go to India, what if you had to pay everybody the same? What would your business decision look like? Africa, okay? What would the business world look like? I think this is what we're coping with now today because listen to the conversations. Okay, the conversations were about should we have a global minimum wage or not? Should we have a global government or not? And practically, we do. Those were the conversations. The conversations, 150 years old feminism. What is feminism today? Is feminism my right to not have a child? Is feminism my right to have a child and be able to raise it while I go to work doing what I love and was made to do in this world? Um, Both. What is feminism? Is feminism about me being able to do what a man does, or about me being able to do what a man does in a woman way, in my way, or you know having IR done in a Venusian way? Um, what is feminism now? And also, you know, with women and men is not the only gender. So and with Uranus there, again, Uranus is also about gender equity for all genders. It's about systems that are dynamic and non-linear. Okay, so chaos magic, even depending on the house, if it's like your eighth house or something. Um, all of those things, and remember, we're heading towards the direction of equity for Venus. This is what Uranus brings. Okay. Um, we are heading towards that direction. If we were heading towards the direction of equity for individuals, with the Uranus in Aries, um, it is again. It's a minus cycle. Okay, it's only a year and something, a year and a half that I think is left, or even less. Yeah, year and a half, 2 years, um, with Uranus being in Taurus, but also with Uranus it's a 7-8 year cycle. With the North Node it's only like a year and a half, 2 years, uh, not much more that you have this. We're letting go of the old from the Scorpio pole, and we bring in the new. And then you know we deal with whatever the ruling planet deals with. So for Taurus, it's Venus. What's Venus doing right now? It's sextiling that great conjunction. Okay, where is she sextiling it from? In Cancer. Where's the moon? Was in Libra yesterday. Equity, 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 equity. What's Cancer? Emotions, nourishment. What's Taurus? Food, nourishing food, and paying attention to the emotional process. Okay, if I eat this lamb or if I eat this cow, whatever, maybe I have to eat it, but what if where are the places where I don't have to, and where are the places where I can eat it ethically, and where are the places that I'm not being scolded for eating something that supports my hormonal system, and where are the places where it supports my hormonal system and doesn't have hormones in it that affect my ability to be fertile and creative. Um, and where's Pluto? It's in Capricorn. What's Capricorn doing? It's organizations. What about organizations that help women? Are they good? Do they need changing? Do they see women? Do they see the feminine? What about our leaders? Also our feminist leaders. This is not just the government, the patriarchy. Where have women become patriarchs? And what needs to be done about that? Okay, it's a transient effect, but if you do know the harmonious aspect, and right now it's easy because the North Node is heading to a Venus sign, then you know that there is a solution. It's about innovation, it's about a new perspective, it's about new technology, it's about a new ideology that is more grounded, that's more down to earth. Okay, because if we had, if we take, concerning food, meat is murder. Okay, but what about the victims of domestic violence that were nearly murdered and their children? What would support their nervous system? It's not necessarily only vegan food. That's not necessarily true. Or, another ideology. Women can do exactly what the man does, blah, blah, blah. Yes, absolutely, but look at what the man does. For a woman, she has a menstruation. You can see it's the fifth vital sign. But for a man, until he tries to bring children, if he doesn't check his sperm, he doesn't know that he might be infertile because he was doing all these things for way too long. And we both need to do less of them because we want to have more leisure time that allows us to explore sensuality and to balance our hormonal system and our creativity and fertility, which is the reason we're doing all these, wars and labors to begin with. Okay, what about technology? Oh, AI is very terrible. Okay, what if you could have a robot that could protect a woman who escaped from her husband and was trying to murder her, and that robot could perhaps defend her or even assault the assaulter, and she could be 24/7 with that robot, and you don't worry about a guarding dog that could die on mission, or even police people that could die on mission. You care for the technology with the pros and cons of hacking and all that, but it's like, oh, okay, and then you have more like a down to earth view of those things that you either banned or idea or were had ideation of owning land. Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to own land? Yes. What do you do when you have no water? What do you do when you have no infrastructure? What do you do when they're coming for your weapon? And what do you do when you are now the owner of land and it's your job or the owner of business, and it's your job to make sure that your employees can make a life while making a living just like you can, or are you going into slavery but for the land? um, and that is something that we will be dealing with, not just in the coming days but following this conjunction, and we will be dealing that following throughout the North Node being in Taurus and throughout Uranus being in Taurus. um, so that's the transit. That's the transit. This is, and we will have another, Venus Pluto square. Um, but right now it's the opposition. Um, Remember that you have the power. You are informed. You know that you are on the right side of the equation of history. Um, it's heading towards something that benefits Venus, towards an integration of Venusian aspects. I'm not saying go blind. I'm not saying do not have self-reflection. But know that whatever tries to impose you, whatever tries to kind of make you feel like you're somehow to blame for something, today is gaslighting. And that, technology and initiation and defending your boundaries just now is is on your path. Um, if you integrate those, Martian qualities, those Uranian qualities, then you understand that you're on the right now. So the history is heading towards integrating the aspects of the Venusian that were not integrated for quite a while, um, and to reiterate on them and to to bring them to where they've never been before. Um, and that is something that you do need to do cautiously, but also this is where you're heading and you're being informed. And yeah, now we're playing at the court of the big fellas, and it's not only fellas anymore. Um, and that Plutonian forces could actually be women that embody those qualities. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be men. Don't forget Capricorn is a feminine sign. So how are women doing for women today? This is also a question, because they are also put to the same standards of critique while taking power positions. So women in power position are in no less place for, I'm not saying scrutiny, but definitely critique. Um, have they been just power hungry, or are they really genuinely assisting equity for the feminine, for the display of yin within yang? So that was very morning. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.